has expired. I call the member for Dawson.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker, and I think it's time as a country we had a straightforward conversation about national security, and I accept that some people go into apoplexy any minute that someone mentions one of their trigger words that must form part of the conversation that we have to have around national security. So I suggest that anyone shackled to rabid political correctness and those who permanently search for reasons to be outraged to look away or turn off right now. I am concerned about the rise of Islamism in this country and those who are willing to commit violence in the name of that ideology. And I think we should consider some tighter controls on borders, such as restricting immigration from countries where there is a high prevalence of violent extremism and radicalism. Many immigrants entering this country in recent years do not share our Australian values. Their views are widespread in the countries from which they come, and we must ask if they are diametrically opposed to the values that help shape our nation and underpin our society and our culture. Why did they choose to come to Australia in the first place? There are other countries that they would find less offensive, countries where they could enjoy a similar level of oppression and violence to which they're accustomed, which they obviously want. It's not necessary to travel halfway around the world to come to Australia and demand that Australians change their culture, their society and their laws to match those of their former homeland. If we fail to realise that some of the people who do follow that path despise our nation, despise our people and despise our way of life and wish to do us harm, then we as a nation will fail and the consequences will be catastrophic. We need to have this conversation about national security because the alternative is to allow free rein to those who do discuss our national security and discuss it in terms of violence, random killings, beheadings and acts of terrorism. For those who we have already failed to stop at the front door or who we've allowed to come through the back door via boat, we must act in the national interest to protect our values. Now, those who come to our shores who do not share our values do not deserve Australian citizenship, and if dual citizens demonstrate their hatred of our values by planning and committing acts of terrorism or by joining foreign armies to fight against our own, they now can be rightly stripped of Australian citizenship. But we should be going further. Those who do not hold dual citizenship but have the capacity to become citizens of another country should have their Australian citizenship revoked and be advised to seek alternative residency arrangements. I note the wording of the pledge made by Australians or residents when they become Australian citizens. It says, "From this time forward I pledge my loyalty to Australia and its people, whose democratic beliefs I share, whose rights and liberties I respect, and whose laws I will uphold and obey." I note also that applicants for provisional, permanent and some temporary visas are required to sign a statement reflecting these core values in a little more detail, and it goes on to say, "I undertake to respect these values of Australian society during my stay in Australia and to obey the laws of Australia." Now, as a nation, we've made it very clear what is expected from citizens, and if we are to take these responsibilities seriously, we must show the intestinal fortitude to take action against those who breach those rules. We must also have the intestinal fortitude to not only insist on the rule of Australian law, but to specifically rule out the possibility of any other law applying in this country, and I particularly name sharia law. There have been repeated calls for the introduction of sharia law into Australia for a number of years now. Back in 2010, the Sydney Morning Herald reported, headline, "Elements of Islamic law, the sharia, should be legally recognised in Australia so that Muslims can live according to their faith," a prominent Muslim leader says. That Muslim leader was the president of the Australian Islamic Mission, Zachariah Matthews, speaking in an open day at the Lakemba Mosque. In 2011, another report, the Australian Federation of Islamic Councils wants Muslims to be able to marry, divorce and conduct financial transactions under the principles of sharia law. Recently, we've seen sharia law being practiced in this country, according to the Australian, reporting on the 23rd of December last year. Australia may be a plural society, but we only have one law. We enjoy many freedoms, including freedom of religion. But sharia is not a religion, and for that matter neither is Islamism. In this country, there is no freedom to pick and choose which laws you obey. Our law, our values, our culture and our society have made this country the greatest in the world. We must continue a conversation on national security to ensure
Order.
it stays
The
that
member's
way.
time has expired.